Hello and welcome, stargazers. This is APM, your intrepid star guide, and in this episode we're going to delve into 3 mysterious events to demonstrate how we can use astrology to investigate the unexplained through a quantum astrology lens. Trigger warning: this episode contains unexplained phenomena that may challenge established worldviews and contains references to potential extraterrestrial contact. Whilst we maintain a scientific approach, for the most part, some listeners might find these topics unsettling. Listener discretion is advised. Housekeeping. Before we enter into today's quantum mysteries, a quick reminder that you can hit that like button and share your consciousness expanding friends, please. If you're feeling the cosmic vibes, leave us a 5-star review, because your support helps other seekers find their way to the astrology community. Okay? And speaking of community, have you subscribed to the Daily Stargazer newsletter yet? Because each day you'll receive personalized, quantum astrological insights complete with planetary motions and potential reality-bending phenomena to watch out for. Sign up at substack.com/the outlaw astrology. You'll find this link in the show notes to align your consciousness with the cosmic flow. Now, let's explore some quantum mysteries. Okay, so the first mystery is called the wow signal. And the wow signal occurred on the 15th of August, 1977 at 10:16 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at Ohio State University. And so basically it is a powerful narrowband radio signal detected by a engineer at that lasted about 72 seconds, and it bore expected hallmarks of a potential extraterrestrial origin. That is the interpretation. It has never been repeated, and its designation, wow, comes from Jerry Emmons. That was the astronomer on duty at the time. That was the notation on the computer printout. Now we're going to look at the chart for that particular day. So we're going to start off with the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. The ascendant is in Aries. The sun is in Leo. It is in the 5th house. The moon is in Virgo. It is in the 6th. This is a waxing new moon, and new moon energy tends to be the seed within. So it's about the seed breaking free and cracking open. And what that basically means is that it is a new personality. It is a new energy. It is something new and never seen before and can possibly be explored. It's a chance to pioneer and to trailblaze. And an interesting note about scientists is that they all usually have some sort of paranormal or supernatural fringe interest that they really like to study alongside science. So some of them are into the unexplained, UFO sightings, that sort of thing. Some are into remote viewing. Some of them are into psychometry. It's just all sorts of things that they get into. And so when you see a new moon, it's an opportunity. It could potentially be a new field that is worth exploring and experimenting into. Okay, so what we're looking at is a chart signature that is a lot of fire and highly cardinal, so very Aries energy. Trailblazing, independent, courageous, impulsive, sometimes very restless type energy. Fire energy inspires, it drives, it creates with enthusiasm, while cardinal energy tends to be initiatory, meaning it wants to set things off. It's very ambitious and likes to move in and on quite quickly. So that's the energy. There's lots of sextiles, so that's opportunity. A lot of opportunity, point of fact. And I'm not seeing too many. Let me see if we have any out-of-bounds planets. I always like to check that. And no, we do not. So no out-of-bounds planets. The energy tends to be more subjective. That'd be north leaning. So the northern hemisphere of a chart would be houses 1 through 6, and then eastern leaning or south or west leaning, west East being everything on the left side of the chart, which is houses 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, and 3, and 4 all the way to 9 will be the western part of the chart. So since it's a heavily north leaning, the north tends to be subconscious and subjective orientation. So this is open to personal interpretation would be how I would read that. And planets in the west are like an input stream. It's basically receiving energy from others who are in the environment. So basically it is a field that anyone can get into, step into, and investigate. Lastly, we have very heavy in the first quadrant, which would be houses 1 through 3, and that starts with the ascendant. It's about agency and autonomous activity. And the third quadrant, which is starts with the descendant, and which is the opposing point of the ascendant, which represents communion and receptivity to others. So there's going to be a give and a take between what one personally believes and thinks and views and what others might also think and view. So kind of a give and a take, a chance for choice, a chance to learn, to grow, and to experiment. And we're looking at major aspects. There are quite a few. I am not going to go into all of them because we really do not have all of that time. We've got, when it comes to the sun and the moon, we're going to focus on major aspects to the sun, major aspects to the moon, and major aspects to the ascendant, descendant at this point. So what we have is Mercury is in a square with both the ascendant and descendant. So let's have a look at that. Now, keeping in mind the sun is in Aries. Now, the ascendant's in Aries, the sun is in Leo, which would be in the 5th house. So that's where it's hanging out, and it's got Saturn alongside for the ride. That means that energy is fused. I would say this is more about being masterful. So when one wants to create, when one wants to play, the 5th house is absolutely about speculation. So we're going to look alongside, and there is Mercury hanging out in Virgo, co-present with the moon in the 6th house. And so it is its own dispositor. I don't have to look around unless I really, really want to. I could look at series, but for the sake of this podcast episode, we're going to keep it simple, and I'm going to keep it to Mercury. And so Mercury is at 18 degrees, and it is in Mercury in a sign that it naturally feels comfortable in and fuels and calls the shots on. And that basically means that Mercury in the 6th house is all very thinky. Likes order, likes things to make sense, loves to analyze, is very discerning. That's the type of energy. Very grounded, very practical, requires a framework. Now, I did say that it is square the ascendant. That's about a wide differential there. It's about 9 degrees, a little wide for my taste, but you could read it there if you use if you tend to use wider orbs. This is at 9 degrees. That's 9 is a little over what I prefer to use. But just for the sake of it, let's discuss that. The ascendant in Aries is impulsive, restless. It just wants to go and move on quickly. It's inspired, it's creative. Once it has an idea, it likes to run with it. So this identity is someone who sees themselves, this energy would be trailblazing energy. And so this is an opportunity, when you've got the ascendant in this chart, it's an opportunity to blaze a trail. To be a trailblazer would be the way I would read this. So, since that's a little wide for my taste, I was going to step into it, and I did briefly, but what I'm going to do is reorient myself. So, Mars in Gemini is the chart ruler and it is in the third house in this chart. So what does that tell me about this chart? Basically, it's telling me there's a desire. It's curious, inquisitiveness. Third house is all about intellect. It's also childhood pedagogy, but it's mostly about how we communicate. And so, since this is a new field of research and a new idea, and it's 1977 when those sort of things had a tendency to happen with a great deal of regularity, the third house is naturally a house in which Mercury is quite comfortable, which means this Mars is looking back at that Mercury in the sixth house. And that Mercury in the sixth house is orderly and practical. That means that this is going to be approached in a scientific way. As curious as we might be, as shape-shifty, this could go anywhere, but it needs a framework. Otherwise, no information that comes from this wow signal and any research thereof is going to make any sense. So it's basically opening a new frontier here, and on the daily, to study this new frontier, we're going to need a scientific framework so that we can discern what we should pay attention to and what we should not pay attention to. Mars is at 19 degrees and is forming a square to Mercury, which is the shot caller there of that third house. It is also co-present with Jupiter, but we're not going to go into that at the moment. So we got a square here. That square tension is saying it's not going to be an easy and comfortable thing to provide a framework, a scientific framework for this particular thing, because it is a new study, and so those protocols have not yet been invented and are probably going to have to be invented on the fly. Now, when we're looking at Mercury in quantum astrology, it can talk about, is basically messenger of the gods, let's remind, representation of transmissions, of interpretation of mysterious information, and in investigating unexplained phenomena. So it can govern ancient inscriptions, symbolic languages, patterns of communication that transcend ordinary understanding, as this would, because this is a signal, which can be seen as a form of communication. And the translation of cosmic messages into into pathways that could be easier for humans to understand. So this particular signal could be seen as a communication, but we don't yet have the scientific framework to investigate. At least we did not at that time in 1977. Okay, so that would be one way I would look at that. Well, now the sun is in the fifth house, and let's have a quick view at that. The sun is at 23 degrees. And I basically like to look around to see if anything is close. Any planets close around that time and along that space. And at 23, we've got the sun in Leo and is forming a sextile to Jupiter at 29 degrees. That is about a 6-degree spread there. And Jupiter's in the third house, co-present with Mars, and the Sun is in the fifth. That two energies is speculating. Since we don't have a proper framework, and we're going to have to make that framework up, we're going to have to speculate. And that speculation is going to be very experimental. That means very trial and error. And since Jupiter is not functioning at its best when it's in Gemini, because that is the sign opposite Sagittarius, the planet rules Sagittarius, Jupiter does, and not Gemini, so not comfortable. So going to have to learn, because a sextile is, you're going to have to learn some new stuff. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's easy. Just because it's not as hard as a square doesn't mean it's easeful. There's going to be some mild tension and mild discomfort, because a sextile is not like a trine in that it's something that is comfortable and known. It is an exploration of the unknown and learning new skills. And while it's much more comfortable and less challenging than a square or an opposition. So that's basically saying that whatever framework, whatever beliefs we have are going to be very shape-shifty. We're going to have to lead with curiosity, but that doesn't mean that everything that we decide to focus on when investigating the wow signal is going to be useful. And more to the fact, we are investigating, and since Saturn is about 3 degrees off of the Sun in Leo, That means we're going to have to learn some hard lessons. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. I'm going to need to have some boundaries if we're going to have a chance of corralling this information in a way that other scientists can appreciate and will not immediately dismiss. Okay? And let's step into the Phoenix Lights. So the Phoenix Lights happened on the 13th of March, 1997 at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time in Phoenix, Arizona. And so one of the most widely witnessed UFO events in history, where multiple mysterious lights moved across the Arizona sky in formation. Thousands of witnesses, including the governor at the time, observed this particular phenomenon. So we're going to pull up that chart as well and have a look quite briefly to give you an idea. And the reason why we are doing this is to show that you can use astrology to better understand darkness, but you can understand things that literally don't make sense. You're just like, literally makes zero sense with you. So let me give you the Trinity and the lunation. So the sun is in Pisces, the moon is in Gemini, and the ascendant is in Libra. We are at a waxing crescent. That means certain facts will be known, but not completely known. That means there's a lot that we don't know about this particular event. The moon tends to be about how we nurture ourselves, but it's also about the past, and it's also very shape-shifty. That means also hidden knowledge, things that we don't see well, things of that nature. Now, if we're looking at the moon in quantum astrology, it governs the hidden realms and subconscious understanding. So, when investigating mysteries, it can represent intuitive insights, symbolic patterns, and the ephemeral qualities that defy conventional explanation. It can guide us through the shadows of the unknown with ancient wisdom or even just very extraterrestrial wisdom. Okay, so that is what the moon could potentially mean in this very emerging field. What we have is the sun in Pisces, as I've said, the ascendant. Chart ruler here, since I've already said that, and I just realized I'm looking at my notes and repeating myself, the chart ruler here would be Venus in Pisces, which disposits to Neptune in Capricorn, and Neptune in Capricorn is in the 4th house, which goes to Saturn in Aries in the 7th, which is in its fall. Okay, so let's have a look at our chart. Before we do that, let me have a look. We're going to tell you the chart signature. I realized I didn't do that yet. This is a mutable chart with a lot of fire. So mutable fire would be Sagittarius energy, and that means mutable. The signs tend to be flexible and versatile and capable of adapting to change easily. So very shape-shifty, very fluid, and fire is inspiring, drives, and creates with enthusiasm. So those would be the energies we'd be looking for. Lots. Like the previous chart, the wow signal, there are sextiles aplenty. And I do not see any planets that are currently in this chart out of bounds. There is a heavy emphasis in the northern hemisphere, which tends to be personal and subjective, and a heavy emphasis, once again, with the western hemisphere, which tends to be more about output stream, meaning about what others think. So basically, when we're talking about these type of events, we're talking about a subjective opinion that is going to have to play with an objective reality, meaning a reality that happens to be outside of ourselves. When it comes to house emphasis, the emphasis is highly on the second quadrant, which has a lot of energy there. So the second quadrant starts with the inner heaven, otherwise known as the Imam Kweli, which represents inner empowerment and rootedness. Okay, so we're looking at an event that has far more people watching. The other event had a smaller grouping of people watching, probably in a lab, at an observatory, watching this and seeing that signal and thinking, what could this mean? This was literally outside with thousands of people watching. So, the Venus, we're going to start there since that is, Venus is hanging out in the 6th house. What do you know? And this chart also has Mercury hanging out in the 6th house. However, in this case, Venus is very strong in this particular chart because Venus in Pisces is exalted. So very dreamy, very fantastical, transcends our understanding and defies conventions. But the problem with Venus in Pisces, the downside is that it can be fantastical and you have a hard time knowing where fact and fiction tend to meet, where it's a very blurry line. It's very liminal. So it's kind of hard to sort out what's fact, what's fiction, even with thousands of people watching, one of which happened to be the governor. At 18 degrees, that is Venus. At 23 degrees, the sun is right alongside in the 6th house, followed by Mercury at 25 degrees and the south node at 28 degrees. So it is a tendency toward the fantastical. This is an extraterrestrial event. That's how it is viewed in anywhere you're going to read it. And there's always going to be a challenge between fact and fiction. Now, that would make Neptune in the 4th house the dispositor, meaning that since Pisces is ruled by Neptune, with quotes, that Neptune is in Capricorn, not the most comfortable place for it. Neptune dissolves, Capricorn wants to actualize. So it's kind of an uncomfortable energy. It's at the 29th degree, like Jupiter was in the past chart. That is a very big deal. It is a big push toward Capricorn energy. It means that this particular Neptune in Capricorn is trying to be spiritual and wanting to take that spirituality and make it practical. That means to take the unexplained, the mysterious, the things that defy comprehension and find some sort of framework, because all of these planets in Pisces are in the 6th house. The 6th house is about the everyday. It is about rituals and all of that sort of thing. And so it is an everyday ritual maybe of looking up at the stars, but it's also an everyday ritual of finding a way to make sense of these events in a way that makes us feel like we're part of something bigger. Because whenever we have an experience of extraterrestrial and out there energy, we're also having to ask ourselves the question, are we alone? And if we are not alone, where are they? How different and how similar are they to us? And it allows us to ask, have faith, and be idealistic, and ask all those questions, very much like the Fool in the tarot card Major Arcana. But it also means that with that south node there, yes, we're imaginative. We're imagining, we're, on the daily of what this could possibly mean. And it's also the bigger question of, if we're not alone out there, what is our place in the cosmos? So we're part of something bigger, but how and in what way? And so that Neptune at the 29th degree in Capricorn is trying to make that push. It's trying to make sense of the inexplicable in a way that makes sense according to how we understand life to be lived. And it is also forming a sextile to the Sun, Mercury, and the south node in varying degrees, as far as narrow as 1 degree and as wide as 6 degrees. And so that's basically saying it's trying to ground the fantastical in a scientific framework, or in a way that is as scientific as can possibly be, given that these people who saw this were not scientists. Try to make sense of the event in a way that they can be certain that it expands their understanding of the world, because that's what Pisces does. It used to be ruled by Jupiter, so an expansion of one's ideals and what one has faith in, but also leading us to be very fantastical and imaginative, so we don't always understand where fact and fiction meet. What is fact, what is fiction? They meet, they intermingle, but now we don't always know the difference between the two. And that Neptune in Capricorn is trying its damnedest to try to do that for us. So that is how I see that. Now, if we're going to look for that, we're going to find Saturn. And see what Saturn is doing in this chart. Saturn is in the 7th house, co-present with Eris and the descendant. Eris is right on the top of the descendant. Eris is about righteous indignation or standing up for things. It's seventh house of the other. And so when we're looking at this particular chart in this particular way, at 8 degrees is where we find it in Leo, because, it's like the last chart around the same time, so it's a return, basically. So they both have, what they have in common is Saturn is in Leo, in addition to Mercury being in the 6th house. So Saturn in Leo tends to be slower to express things, slower to be enthusiastic. It's like, hold on a second. I want things to make sense, and I want to plan ahead. So when we're looking at the 7th house, we're looking at opportunities for the unexplained. Yes, we want to share them. Yes, we want people to be enthusiastic. Yes, we're enthusiastic, but we have to temper our enthusiasm with facts, with things that are reasonable and sensible, so that we are able to get people to listen with a greater degree of interest in us, rather than pushing our ideas away. So when we're looking at, say, Saturn is known in astrology as the Lord of Time and Form, and reveals the underlying frameworks of mysterious phenomena, as how it would be in quantum astrology. So when we investigate, it shows us timing systems and celestial alignments, sometimes ancient or extraterrestrial timing, the physical and temporal boundaries of unexplained events, and karmic patterns and cycles within mysterious occurrences. And so I wouldn't say I'm looking for a cycle. And this is 1997. This is literally 20 years from the wow signal, which happened in August. This one happens in, I believe, March 13th. So pretty much in the northern hemisphere in the early part of the year, and at night, because it's more likely you can see these things than during the day. So what can it tell us about boundaries of these unexplained events? Well, since it's in the 7th house and it's about other people's perceptions, how other people might see this, I would say that Saturn in Leo is going to be interested in speaking and expressing with a great deal of care. You're going to want to choose how to share these insights, how to share the event in a way that will make people receptive to listening. The sun is the last dispositor here. Or actually not the last. It goes in a circle, this whole thing. It'll disposit back to Neptune. So the sun is in Pisces at 23 degrees. That definitely means March. And alongside for the ride, like I said, Venus, Mercury, and the South Node. And since the South Node is very powerful, our tendency is to be very fanciful and tell fanciful stories. However, we need to temper this energy with North Node energy. And that means that what we don't see is Mars and the North Node right on top of each other. So we're going to have to work very hard to create frameworks, scientific frameworks, that make sense of the event. That whilst we want to tell fantastical, imaginative stories that bridge the gap between imagination and science, we definitely want to err on the side of science, less be imaginative, but also less ground ourselves as much as we can in the practical. Because we can definitely, with a South Node in Pisces, get caught up and run away with all of our imagination. We can run away with ourselves, and very well run away in a way that makes it hard for this phenomenon to make sense to us. Because, like I said, if you see extraterrestrials out there, you realize you're part of something bigger. But to investigate it, to quantify it, one needs that Mercury energy in Pisces, which goes to that 12th house. What's hidden is the ability to discern truth from fact. We should probably lean on the ability to be more discerning when we hear these stories, and also not allow ourselves or other people to get too fantastical. Okay? So that's how I would read that. Lastly, we have, quite briefly, Yes, I've got two segments here quite briefly. So here is what I want to say about this. The key takeaway here is that the convergence of quantum mechanics and astrology offers us a unique perspective on unexplained phenomena. So the two case studies that I shared today, we can see how these cosmic alignments may mirror the mysterious nature of these events, okay? So suggesting an interconnected cosmos that operates beyond our current scientific understanding is what I want to pound in here, okay? And so, something to ponder. If these events are threads in the cosmic tapestry, what other patterns might we discover by examining the quantum and the astrological together and their signatures of unexplained phenomena? So perhaps the answers lie not in an either-or thinking, that is black and white thinking, but more in this space where there are multiple ways of knowing which they intersect. And so that is what all that Pisces energy in the 6th house and connecting it to that 12th house, that could be a possible interpretation on that. And so if you like what you're listening to, feel free to follow us on Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. You'll find those links in the show notes. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the mysteries of space, time, and consciousness. Until next time, keep your eyes on the stars and your mind open to infinite possibilities. This is your Quantum Astrologer APM, signing off. Peace and astro magic, stargazers.